You know that feeling, right? An invite for a party pops up on your phone, and your first thought, it isn't, what am I going to wear? It's, okay, what's a believable excuse to stay home? Not because you're sad or you're anxious, but because, honestly, you would just rather be by yourself. For the longest time, society's kind of made us feel like that's a problem. Well, it turns out we've been getting it completely wrong.
So, first things first, let's get one crucial thing straight. We have completely confused being alone with being lonely. One of them? Yeah, that's a wound. It's that ache for a connection that you just don't have. But the other? That's a preference, a choice. And, as we're about to find out, it might actually be a kind of superpower.
For decades, psychology basically threw everyone who enjoyed solitude into one big, concerning box, and the labels they slapped on it, not exactly flattering. You were a loner, antisocial, maybe even a little damaged. The assumption was always that if you enjoyed your own company, well, something must be a little off with you, like you were one bad day away from a supervillain origin story.
But then, we get this fantastic plot twist in the research. Back in 2016, a team of psychologists at the University of Buffalo decided to really push back on these old ideas. They asked a simple but revolutionary question. What if some people just like being alone? Not because they're afraid of people or because they're broken, but because solitude genuinely feels good to them.
And so, this study gave us a new word to make this really clear: unsociability. Now, it is so important to understand what this isn't. It's not being antisocial. That's when there's an act of hostility towards people. And it's not social avoidance, which is when you retreat from people because you're afraid. Unsociability is something else entirely.
The key here is that it's a choice made from a place of security. The researchers, led by a psychologist named Julie Bowker, found that this unsociable group, well, they didn't have negative outcomes like anxiety or depression. And here's where the plot twist gets even better. They weren't just okay, they were often thriving, with high levels of creativity and well-being.
So, why? What is actually happening inside the brain of someone who loves being alone? Well, it's not just some personality quirk. Turns out it's baked right into your neurological wiring.
Okay, so the first big piece of the puzzle has to do with your dopamine system. You know dopamine, it's that feel-good chemical our brain releases as a reward. Now, for a lot of people, a huge party or a big social gathering triggers this massive flood of dopamine, and they feel amazing. But for the unsociable person, the brain's response is, well, totally different. A really great way to get this is to think of it like spice tolerance. An extrovert? They might need the whole jalapeno to really feel that social buzz. But a person who loves solitude, their dopamine system is just way more sensitive. A single flake of red pepper, a quiet night, a great book, a deep thought, that's all it takes to feel perfectly stimulated. Any more than that, and it's not rewarding, it's just overwhelming. But it's not just about what you don't need from the outside world. It's about what your brain is doing on the inside. When you're alone, your prefrontal cortex, which is basically the CEO of your brain, it goes into overdrive. You're not just staring at a wall. Your brain is having a private party, full of deep thinking, self-reflection, and creative problem-solving. For this kind of brain, solitude isn't empty time. It is incredibly productive time.
And all that amazing brain activity leads directly to what you could honestly call a creative superpower. Think about it. Study after study shows that those real aha moments, they almost never happen in a loud, crowded meeting. They happen in the quiet.
And hey, this isn't some brand new idea. Some of the most creative people in history knew this in their bones. Virginia Woolf, for example, famously argued that to create anything meaningful, you absolutely need solitude, a room of one's own.
And she was in good company. I mean, two of the greatest scientific minds ever, Einstein and Newton. Where did they do their most world-changing work? Yep, by themselves.
The incredible Maya Angelou understood this so well that even though she had a perfectly lovely home, she would rent a tiny, sparse hotel room to work in. Why? To create a space dedicated to nothing but solitude, so her creativity could just flow without any interruptions.
Okay, so we've seen the science, the creative power of solitude. It all sounds pretty great. But before we all just cancel everything and become hermits, there's a really important distinction we have to make. In this next part, it requires a little bit of an honest self-check.
This is the big, maybe even uncomfortable question you have to ask yourself. Because for some of us, solitude isn't really a choice.
It's more like a shield. It's armor we put on to protect ourselves from getting hurt, from being judged, or just from the messy vulnerability of being with other people.
The psychologist Abraham Maslow gave us a perfect way to think about this. He basically said that healthy solitude comes from a place of abundance, not scarcity. You're not alone because you can't connect. You're alone because you're busy connecting with yourself. It's not about running from people. It's about running toward yourself.
So let's make this super practical. Just ask yourself, what's my why? If your reasons for being alone sound like things like, I need to recharge, or I need to create, or I just need to think, you're probably in that healthy, unsociable zone. But if your reasons sound more like, it's just safer this way, or it's easier, or it's less painful, that might be pointing to something else worth looking at. Not bad, just different.
But for those of you who really are choosing solitude, it means you've figured out something incredibly profound. You've basically rejected this huge story that society tells us, the one that says you're somehow incomplete on your own.
I mean, our culture is obsessed with phrases like my better half or you complete me. It frames every single one of us as a broken Lego piece, looking for the one other piece that will make us whole. But people who thrive in solitude, they have a totally different view. They know they're not a single piece. They're the whole set, all by themselves.
And get this, here's the craziest part. Being this self-sufficient doesn't make you a worse friend or partner, it actually makes you a better one. Research from Dr. Bella DiPaolo shows that people who truly embrace their alone time often have much stronger, more meaningful relationships. Why? Because when you show up for people, you're not depleted, you're recharged, and you're bringing your whole self to the table.
And this whole idea isn't just some fringe theory. In Japan, they actually have a word for this, hitori. It literally means alone time. But it's not a sad thing, it's celebrated. They have restaurants with solo dining booths, single-person karaoke rooms. They've literally built a culture around the value of being with yourself.
Which brings us all the way back to the beginning. The next time you happily turn down an invitation, or someone asks why you're at a coffee shop by yourself, what's the real answer? Sure, you could try to explain dopamine sensitivity, or you could give them a much simpler and much more powerful truth. And that's it. That's the whole ball game. Enjoying your own company isn't a social failure. It's not a character flaw. At its absolute best, it is a profound act of self-love. It's the ultimate sign that you are truly comfortable in the most important company you will ever keep, your own.